Hello. Welcome to the Stockout. This is your show at FreightWaves for all things related to the CPG industry, the consumer packaged goods industry, and also the retail industry since we've merged those shows. I'm Mike Baudendistel, joined by Grace Sharkey. Grace, it was good to see you last week. If you had to choose just one highlight of F3, what would it be?
Probably for sure Brad Jacobs' chat. I mean, just especially for someone of his stature and leading a public company, multiple, if you want to look at it in that way, to just take questions without any prep or at least someone on his side kind of vetting them a little bit, was really great to see. And he answered them all so openly and candidly. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, definitely. He was the biggest, heaviest hitter that we had at the conference for sure. So maybe the biggest draw on stage aside from TI. I think for me, it was that JB Hunt had that announcement that they're going to have the premium intermodal service, have it in and out of Denver. And I thought it was so cool just that, they made the announcement at our conference. And I hope our conference has become a destination for companies making announcements. I think that would be really cool, where just sort of going into the conference, there's kind of maybe buzz around what's going to be announced, at this FreightWaves conference. So hopefully we can do that.
Yeah, they
also
came
saw you
into
on.
I was gonna say they came into like full swag, so they full on planned that, and it was. I'm excited we get to talk about that a little bit on the radio tomorrow too.
Yeah, so much of the great content of FreightWaves is these startup companies that are pitching their ideas to the venture capital communities in the crowd, and it's also great to have the company on the opposite side of the spectrum, sort of the biggest established companies with that BNSF, Railroad, and JB Hunt. So the biggest what they do and intermodal, both of them are. Saw you on FreightWaves Now this morning. So for anyone who doesn't know what FreightWaves Now is, there's a 2-hour video show every morning. It's kind of the Good Morning America of freight, if you will. If you don't have 2 hours in the morning to watch a television show, which you probably don't, you can still go back and skip around on YouTube, which is probably the more efficient way to view it. And you talked about some of what Walmart is pushing with the Walmart Plus subscription. And what stood out to me was just you talked about the difference in subscriber counts. So Amazon Prime, you have 170 million households, which is most every household in the U.S. I think about three people in a household. Costco, I looked up, 125 million members, and that's primarily
Wow.
U.S. and Canadian company too. So that's pretty close. That's higher, more than I would have expected. Walmart Plus, somewhere between 10 and 20 million. So Amazon Prime, you have 9 times what Walmart Plus has. Costco, you have about 6 times what Walmart Plus has. If you had to guess in 5 years, do you think those gaps are going to close?
Man, that 170 I think is gonna be a tough one. Plus, just think of everything Amazon's doing on top of that. I mean, the one thing I think where Walmart will maybe win a little bit is the half off to those with government food stamps and things of that nature. I think that's a lot of their consumers as well. And I think I looked up, it was like 41 million people as of last year that were on some type of governmental like food stamps or assistance. So I think that'll help them catch up a little bit. But I don't know, it'd be interesting because Walmart does have that worldwide presence, and we'll see exactly how they grow it. For anyone out there that has Paramount Plus, like, it seems reasonable to probably get just Walmart Plus and have that in there too. So it depends on how they continue to bundle it. But at the end of the day, like, a part of Amazon Prime is that you also get this awesome movies and TV shows that come along with it too. So I think the perks are a little bit more attractive on the Amazon side, but we'll continue to see it grow. But it's a huge long shot, right? 170 million and that it's, you said it, 10 to 20, like no one knows the exact number, and 10 to 20 million alone is enough of a gap for me to question that alone. So we'll see how they grow, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be anytime soon. And I do think there's only so many subscriptions people are going to want. Like, I don't think anyone's going to want Amazon Prime, Costco, and Walmart Plus. So it almost has to come at the expense of maybe some of these. Does Target have a subscription service like this, or they just kind of don't believe in it?
N- No, I think the way maybe you look at Target is just is shipped. Like I think that's the cool thing about shipped, right? Is it's not just Target. I mean, like you can do Myers, CVS. There's a lot of different ways, different stores that you can use that type of service for. So
Mhm.
unless that's what I mean, like the Walmart one for me is it seems there's not much attached to it right now as compared to the Amazon one. So I could even see it competing over time with kind of the ship performance as well.
Mhm. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about all the other things that Shipped can do. You sort of just think of it, well, it was acquired by Target, it's Target's property, but that's a good point. Um, it does seem like really the main reason behind these subscriptions is just kind of the psychological impact that once you spend on these subscription services, it's just you feel bad if you subscribe to something and you don't use it. And so that's what gets people to subscribe to more. Like the Amazon Prime, originally it was $79. It was never about collecting $79 from anyone. It was just
Yeah.
that they know the Amazon Prime people spend about 4 times as much on Amazon as the non-Prime people do. And I think that's the strategy with maybe Walmart Plus as well, in addition to what you talked about this morning, which is being able to collect all this information about
Yeah.
consumers, leverage that into their advertising business. The advertising business is much higher margin than the other segments of the business. So that'll be a big part of everyone's strategy, I think, going forward. Want to talk a little bit about Target. There's some interesting articles about Target here recently. There was one in Wall Street Journal. There was a couple in Winsight Grocery Business, which I think has a good newsletter as well. I'm going to bring up the stock chart, which is this might be the stock chart of the sector, which is Target's performance. So the black line is Target. This is a 1-year chart. So in the last year, Target shares down about 34%. Walmart is in blue. It's up 11%. So huge difference between the two. And that
Yeah.
started in June of this year. And then, I probably should have put this on a longer range chart because it kind of both of them, went down last year in the middle of the year because both of them have way too much inventory, and Walmart did a better job of catching up on inventory. Now, part of this gap is because Walmart's better with grocery. It's about half their sales. Target's more weighted towards discretionary, items. Walmart's viewed more for quality. That helps when people are trying to fight all the inflation and every item of their personal line item. But still, there was interesting that Bank of America analysts upgraded the shares of Target in October, and I love calls like that because you can sort of say, at some point, the bad news is in the stock. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, including all the nonsense about the LGBTQ items. I don't know who actually cares about that when they're going to buy, toothpaste and cereal. But it can only get so much worse. And Target's margins already been cut in half, and they do have a little bit different clientele. So I love calls like that, which that guy must have gotten a lot of flack from people in shorting the shares. You do have to have a thick skin, so it is going to be a busy week for earnings. We're going to have more on this, I think, on the newsletter coming out this week. So this week we have Target, Walmart, Home Depot all reporting. Macy's reporting as well. Target's same store sales been down 5% year over year for a couple quarters in a row. Analysts are expecting to be down also about 5%. This quarter that's about to be reported. So we'll see if they can do any better than that. They've already cut expectations for the year earlier. So we'll see if they can maybe actually beat some of those lowered expectations, which maybe that's possible because consumers still seems to keep spending. Target says they're focused a little bit more on lower priced products, and Winsight Grocery Business, and apparently he's talking about how they've actually done a lot better in grocery. I mean, they're not going to be Walmart in grocery anytime soon, but now they're the 6th largest in grocery, 4th largest in online grocery, and some of the smaller format, newer store sales, some of these more urban destinations, 40 to 50% of the mix is now grocery. So that looks an awful lot like Target's business. So what did you think of bull call on Target? You think it's all washed out, or you think there's another shoe to drop?
I, it's interesting because I was just in there right before we came to F3, and I will say, I think this time of the year, right, when we see Target's like where I go to mostly to get decorations, kind of get all these Christmas gifts, etc. I'm interested to see how they end the year. Hopefully to see them a little bit up. I will say, grocery wise, the fact that they're talking about, especially bringing down prices, I think is big. They don't really compete, at least in my region, compared to others, including Walmart, Kroger, etc. So it's always this is the last place I usually go to buy groceries. But I will say their private label foods are pretty interesting, especially around the holidays as well. Like I said, they just had those out, and I was like, okay, some of these are really. I probably shouldn't have bought as many, but were really interesting, like recipes and snacks and treats and stuff like that. So Target, I think, is like a lot of people go there. Gift cards. It's like an easy gift card gift to get. That's part of the reason I was there, was grabbing gift cards for family parties. So I'd like to see how they end out the year. But made the right call, I guess he did on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that analyst had the dry powder to do it, staying away from Target initially, not recommending it. I want to hit on article published over the weekend by Zach Strickland. He does a chart of the week article most Saturdays. This is relevant for retailers and CPG companies. Diminished inventories may boost holiday expediting, and so Zach looks closely at really everything in Sonar, but specifically some of the truckload data. And one of the patterns here recently has been this spike in tender volume index outbound from Ontario, California. So that's the Inland Empire and Dallas. You've seen a spike. We can bring up that Sonar chart here recently. And basically the reason why that's important there in November is that in a lot of most cases, that freight's a long way from the consumption centers. Therefore, it shows it has to be expedited. So it's something that could potentially cause spikes in freight costs as well. So with that, I want to leave enough time for the next guest. Grace, you want to introduce them?
Yeah, so it's a good friend of mine. He's been actually on the radio show with me before. We have with us today Kerim Kfuri, president of the Atlas Network. Kerim, thank you so much for joining us today. We're happy to have you on the Stockout.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I would love if you could introduce yourself and your background and what really brought you to the Atlas Network today, and a little bit about what the Atlas Network is doing.
Sure. The Atlas Network is a global supply chain solutions company. We've been around for about 20 years, and our main focus is to help customers produce products safely. Mass production delivered safely is really kind of our mantra here. It is a process that is, a bit of a step-by-step one that it took about 2 decades to sort of formulate the appropriate way to do this. And, we're very proud and honored to do this for hundreds of clients, delivering millions of products every single year. And we primarily exist through a lot of industry and trade referral, also a lot of word of mouth, and then a lot of industry relationships where design firms or engineering firms or industry partners will then kind of refer over. They'll do kind of the first part of the equation and then say, you come to a company like the Atlas Network because they're going to, produce these products for you properly through their network of almost 2,000 factories, and kind of a very methodical process to what we do here.
Yeah, I went through your website a little bit, and you make some really cool things on the sort of production side. I mean, you deal a lot with the spirits industry. You have a lot of really unique sort of bottles, and you can see how it's just really eye catching. Go to a liquor store, and there's just seems like countless number of product on the shelf, and it's just you sort of buy one because the label looks cool, or bottle looks cool, or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the advantages and disadvantages of sort of having a custom solution for packaging like that versus one that's sort of off the shelf?
Sure. So when we're talking about the spirits industry, and a lot really with regards to kind of food and beverage, it's really an industry where people, drink or eat with their eyes. It's a scenario where you really are looking to kind of tell the story effectively. And one of the best ways to do that is with attractive packaging. We've been in kind of servicing the spirits and beverage industry for probably the last 10 to 15 years, where there was a very big kind of boom in craft and spirits markets. Obviously, a lot of celebrities have entered this market and a lot of other brands too, with the opportunity for large scale acquisitions by large multinationals. In this way, by producing and doing kind of a mass customization approach, where you have custom molds for the glass and decoration and closures and shippers and things that are very kind of unique and align very well with the story, you have the ability to really be able to define the market and be able to present something that is truly unique. And when so many brands are on the shelf and trying to compete with each other, that's really a great opportunity to be able to do that with the way that you look and how that look appeals to the customer and aligns very well with the story you're trying to tell as a brand. So that's definitely an area of a lot of business for us in packaging these days.
Can you talk about how, especially with, I assume that more custom packaging, there's the concern of right quality control, shipping, making sure that you're not losing anything on its trip over and throughout its various channels as well. How do you work to make sure that you're helping your customers find that unique design, but also working with manufacturers to make sure that there's no lack of quality with how the product comes out?
Correct. I mean, for us, although we're talking specifically packaging here, we do have a commodities group, a textiles group, and an innovations group. So we do a wide scale amount of production. And the reason why I bring that up is because regardless of the actual product, we have the same kind of formula that we repeat time and time again, which I think is quite important to our success here as a business. And that is to start with the right supplier. And that's by finding suppliers that are both a mixture of quantitative and qualitative factors that we look at, from their accreditations, years of business, number of exports, technology, their responsiveness, their timeliness, professionalism. We look at these different aspects on kind of the first step, which is picking the right supplier. And then the next step is obviously having eyes and ears on the ground. This is very, very important because regardless of how many times you do a production, we consider it always to be the first time. There are different environmental conditions that can change, different people that are working a production line. You never know what can really change. So even though it's not the first time and maybe the 100th time, you have to think about it that it's the first time and really make sure you turn over all the stones regarding both aesthetic and also mechanical aspects of the production. And then finally, the third part of what we do here is a third-party attestation. We always believe that it's important to have the additional set of eyes beyond the factory or manufacturer's quality control, beyond even our own processes, just a third set. So we'll work with registered large-scale audit firms like Bureau Veritas or VTrust, or even outside lab testing parties to basically be able to facilitate that additional level of controls. And this mechanism really allows you to get one of the best kind of outcomes that you could have. It'll never be zero because mass production always has its sort of tolerances. It'll never be 100%, but at least in that way, by having a formulaic method to the process, you get a good outcome.
Yeah, a lot to consider there for sure. I guess with the mass production, do you see much different results when you try to have it manufactured in China versus, let's say, Vietnam or elsewhere in the world? Is there one region of the world that tends to get you better, quality versus cost, or how do you think about that?
I mean, I think the reality is that in Asia, and more specifically China, the manufacturing capabilities are really second to none. They still are. The technology advancements are, at a significant scale. Plus, many companies had relocated their operations or even some of their intellectual property and capital to Asia within the last, let's call it 15 to 20 years. So in that way, there's quite an advantage there with regards to the technology. They obviously have a very large workforce there that's possible. And there's a certain work ethic that you get in China in the manufacturing space specifically that is very strong and an advantage. There are obviously other markets that are very good. You mentioned Vietnam. Vietnam has always had a good opportunity too, but the level of options and capabilities are significantly larger in China. And so for us, when it comes to kind of global mass production, we will always, as an organization, look at every opportunity. And the conversation around nearshoring is always one that is to be had. And if the best opportunity with regards to the product, the technology, the quality, the efficiency, the timeliness, all of these different factors comes out to be something that's closer than further away, it's always a better opportunity. But to this point, to date, we still continue to do a significant amount of production overseas and in China, and that's pretty much how we continue to see it in the market these days.
I guess to even follow up on that as well, clearly right now there's a number of geopolitical issues happening across the globe. Can you tell us how you work with your customers in order to even have backup plans or choose producers that they can rely on, knowing that we're in the environment that we see today?
Yes, I mean, it's always very important to have a straightforward conversation with any client when you're dealing with overseas production. Geopolitical situations aside, there's always risks that are going to be, have to be factored in with regards to aspects of currency and transit, transport, force majeure, a million things that could basically happen that get even further exacerbated by, distance. For us, the way that we manage that is we manage it according to building in enough time. You really have to build in enough time to ensure that the production is done within a certain time horizon. The transit time is within a particular time horizon, and then you've just got this sort of like buffer zone. And the buffer zone is there to basically protect customers with regards to the delivery of their timeframes. We also build in a lot of buffer zones and different kinds of penalties and so forth with regards to our suppliers as well, contractually, to be able to maintain a certain level of performance and delivery. So that's another important aspect of this. Generally speaking, and I mean, this is not a political show, and I'm not a very political person, but the reality of it is that we have to be global citizens, right? We are functioning within a global economy today. We are heavily reliant on overseas resources and capabilities. And I don't really see that changing much for a long time to come. I do think that there are more collaborative initiatives that are happening. I do think that there are some strong nearshoring efforts. But what I'm actually seeing is more that, for example, China opening up factories in Mexico or even in the United States and so forth. So bringing some of their manufacturing know-how and capabilities to actually be part of the nearshoring conversation, where they're looking to kind of cut the gap or bring still their technical skills or their capabilities or different aspects of what have made them successful and do it in a way that may eliminate or reduce some of those cross-border related issues. So I don't see necessarily that that, let's say, China or the geopolitical issues and so on are going to disrupt this. I just think that it's going to change the way that the equation is actually managed.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. On the topic of global trade, wanted to ask you, are you seeing any sort of constraints on the ocean? Currently, I mean, one of the interesting things we've seen in our data is that even though ocean spot rates coming lower, there's still been, basically rolled shipments where some of the shipments have had to go on subsequent, sailings. Have you seen any of that or any other constraints in the transportation networks for global trade?
I would say that from a cost standpoint, not so much, meaning that those times where we had really cost prohibitive containers, are a little bit in our rear view mirror, which I think is a good thing in many ways because there are many businesses that went out of business because they couldn't maintain those additional shipping costs. There's only so many widgets that fit in a container. And if you increase the shipping cost by 50% or 100% or whatever else it is, the product becomes unsustainable. So I don't really think that we're seeing so much of that anymore, and that's leveled off. But I have seen sort of like increased transit times where vessels are taking a lot longer. They're taking some roundabout way to kind of get there. And that's been a bit problematic with regards to some of the delivery cycles, especially coming into the holiday season and then usually during Chinese New Year and post. I think that what's going to have to end up happening is this balancing act between both costs and efficiency. Because right now we're at a place where the costs are aligned, but the efficiency of the transit isn't totally there yet, and it's still a little bit disrupted. And there are some entities and groups that may still be doing some gouging. Hey, let's put it on a cheap vessel, but it's going to take like 60 days instead of 30 days to get there, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's some balancing that still has to be achieved there, but it's generally better. Generally, it's better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, Kerim, running out of time here. We do appreciate all of your, of course, knowledge. And for everyone out there, again, you can go learn more about the Atlas Network on their website as well. We'll make sure to share that on our social. And for our audience out there, that's pretty much it. Watch out for our newsletter at the end of the week. And we'll be back next week with a whole new episode.